Note that Counselor Savengord is under the weather and is going to try and join us by Zoom.
She's just joining us now.
Oh, she is joining. She's signing in as we speak. Counselor Khosrowbadi is running late and asked us to go ahead and start. And Counselor-elect Will Anderson is here with us today. He actually gets sworn in at 6 o'clock. But he's with us today for the work session. So with that, I'll turn it over to Library Director Brent Husher to talk about the library's strategic plan.
Thank you so much, Mayor. This should be very informal. If you have any questions as we go through this, know that I'm happy to take them as we go. There'll also be time at the end of this conversation for your questions as well. But what I really wanted to do is just take a little bit of time to talk about the strategic plan that we've built for the library over the last few months. And I really wanted to daylight potential budget impacts just so you're aware of them and we can, so I can sort of gauge support of those things that would be under your purview at a later point. And also just really sort of talk through the direction of where we're going and give you a little bit of context of how we got here. So in your written report, you'll see a little bit about what we're thinking, but here is our purpose of having a strategic plan. I'll go right to that last bullet. It really is the direction that provides us as we're planning on what we're saying yes to and what we're saying no to. There are so many good things that a library can do and can choose to do, but we just can't do all of the things. So this is the kind of document that guides us. For us, the purpose also includes relieving stress on our funds, our space, our staff, just capacity to do the things. I also want our plan, our roadmap for the future to demonstrate our integration into this, the work of the city, as well as our collaborative nature with the other libraries of Clackamas County. I don't think any of that seems surprising, right? Wouldn't you know it? We're not gonna,
I don't have it just right now. Right now.
Cool. So when you look at what we're trying to do, the priorities really are to improve services by removing barriers. This is really the external focus of where our strategic plan takes us. Internally, I really want to focus on our organizational health, the capacity of our staff to do what we need them to do, but also give them the training so they're able to do what they need to do. And finally, we want everything that we're doing in that strategic way to be in alignment with Milwaukie Momentum, the city's strategic plan. But there are also budget implications, and because many of the people at this table, we've had lots of conversations about budget over the last 6 months and what the future looks like. And I want to just highlight some things that could impact budgets in the future. One of them is something that our library board and our staff strongly believe in, which is the elimination of a daily overdue fine. But anytime we're talking about revenues coming into the city, those are revenues. So I do want to just bring that to your attention. The library brings in for fees, and for fees there are three sorts of fines and fees that the library brings in. One is this daily overdue. Your material is due last week, you have this daily fine until it comes back. The other is you damage something or you don't bring it back. Those damage and replacement costs, that's a different kind of fee. We're not suggesting that we remove that. And then the final is printing and copy. So when
You're not suggesting changing that.
I'm not. I mean, there's flexibility, like if people have personal situations that means that they won't be able to access the library because they lost something. We're going to really work with them to make sure they still have access to the library. But I am suggesting that right now we are an outlier. Actually, the libraries in Clackamas County are an outlier to all the other libraries in this metro area. Washington County, Multnomah County, Clark County, across the river in Washington. We're one of the last libraries in this Metro that's still doing that daily fee. That daily fee is really a traditional fee that isn't really recouping costs for our services, but it's really a penalty. We're literally charging people daily fees for materials they already own, right? It's not like, so anyway, that's the thing. If you really want to get into the equity of the situation, the people who are most hurt by those kinds of fees are the folks who most need our services. Also, this is a thing that libraries in this county are working towards removing. And I just want to put it right out here up front that I need us to daylight that that's our goal. I don't think the other libraries in the county really necessarily talk very openly about this goal yet, but it's coming. So I'm hoping that we can make that work. But again, every little bit of revenue that comes in, we're sort of looking at that, right, as we think about our operations. I did take a look at April fines and fees that the library brought in, and what would that mean if you broke out the different kinds of revenues that the library brought in. And of that roughly $1,200, it's in your written report, but that roughly $1,200 that comes in between daily overdues and loss and damage, it was
$915.
Thank you. I was like, 900? Roughly $11,000 on an annual, which in the course of a full budget is not a lot, but it is not nothing. So I just wanted to bring that up. As we work towards it, I have a strategic goal of trying within the next 2 years to eliminate that. So bring that to you. Potential budget impacts. One of the things that you'll see in this strategic plan is the idea of thinking about how well are we serving our entire community. I think we do really well, the folks who have access to this library building, the folks who have easy access are served very well, but who are we not reaching? So one of the things that we've talked about in reaching the underserved parts of our community may be building out further with either Holtz pickup lockers and strategic neighborhoods in the community, or building up and planning for library outreach vehicles or bookmobiles. I think lockers are possible in a shorter term because they're just a little more feasible to pay for. There are also things that potential partners would probably support us in doing. Our friends, our foundations, I think we could do that without city funds. And a bookmobile is kind of the thing that people would support. So I know that there is an impact, it's just not directly on our budget at this point.
With the bookmobile, you have $200,000.
Yeah.
What would if you had to estimate the annual cost of a bookmobile be? Okay.
I don't know. At this point in the strategic plan, it would not be have one in 3 years. It would be to come up with the details.
I think the $200,000 is for detailed planning, or that is okay.
Yeah. And then you have to figure out how do you staff that? What is the services you're going to provide? But yeah, that's just for a year.
Okay.
That's why if you look in the details of an implementation plan, you're going to see for a vehicle, it's really much more about the planning, the investigation, figuring out how we pay for it and what's.
So I would just say that before the new library was built, in the time we were talking about putting it on the ballot, putting the bond on the ballot and talking about library services, there was a conversation about some of these kind of
Sure it is.
lockers. And actually there was conversation about an eastern branch, possibly in the Johnson Creek Boulevard campus, maybe an eastern branch that has, some children's shelves and some computers and then pick up and drop off and limited hours and stuff. So, this idea has been kicking around for a while, and I would love to see us explore making services more available to the people on the eastern edge.
Yeah, Mayor, if you look at, which is the thing I love to do, I love to look at a map. If you look at both the map of Milwaukie and then you look at the larger service area that this library is supposed to provide service to, we're up in the corner. And we have east and even some southeast, my directions. We're serving way out to the mall, the library is serving. But of course, our services are more than just happening right here. So I feel like what lockers would be able to do for us, or a bookmobile eventually show where the need of the services is. It sort of creates that framework for us to explore where do we need services and who's being left behind by our current system. And we do that. But all that costs money. And if we don't actually plot the course, it's just not going to happen, right?
Well, and now with the news that Wichita Center is staying, that's a potential place for lockers,
100%. I think, and if you talk, you're not even talking about this, but I will right now. Part of the process of developing the strategic plan was doing a work session with our library, bringing an outside facilitator to have that conversation about what is important in our future. We also did that similar conversation with our entire library staff. And the staff, one of the things that came up in that staff conversation is it's more than the materials, it's also the people, it's also the spaces. And I agree. And I look at lockers or bookmobiles is actually a way to define where the service needs to go and then really think about future spaces that we need to build in other parts of this community. And Wichita Center, I think, is a natural partnership with the services we're prioritizing.
Before,
Go ahead.
yeah, I wanted to get back to bullet number 1. Yeah,
I know you're a budget-minded person.
well, my issue is, the fines, I know is not going to be a lot of money and that kind of thing. It's not like it's a, big revenue generator or anything like that. But at the same time, I say, how do you get the books back?
Oh, well, we'll still send you a bill if the books don't come back.
When does the clock strike 12?
So this is going to be very, I'm looking to my partner. Is it 30 days?
It's going to be 30 days, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so right now, that is a good question, and this often comes up here, like, yes, but if there's no daily fine, what is the mechanism for getting things back? So if after 30 days of your overdue date, it's not here, we'll just send a bill for the full item. And at that point, if you bring the item back, it's going to be a max fine right now of like $1 as opposed to the replacement cost. So if it doesn't come back, we're going to charge you for it.
I just didn't want an unintended consequence of shrinkage of the inventory by people holding onto things and just saying, well, I'm not hitting with any fines, so I really don't care whether I bring it back or not.
Well, I was going to say, is it going to, I will tell you, that I keep things longer than I should. I renew them as many times as,
Mayor, you are on line item.
5,000 of that 11,000 yearly.
not 11,000, but,
We'll take your time.
I renew it as many times, sometimes, if I really am intending to still read the thing, I renew it as many times as it lets me renew it. It eventually tells me no more renewals. And if it's a book
I like this finger
and
point.
if it's a book with holds, it tells me no, you can't renew it. But now, what's the downside? I don't care if I can renew it. I'll just keep it until I finish it.
That's true. That's the other side of the argument. And then I would say, well, because why are we charging fines in the first place? Every other fee in the city is designed to recoup costs for the services we're providing. This fine was never designed to do that. It may be to get things back. It may be to teach us a lesson about responsibility, which I don't actually think is our role. But if it makes you feel any better, I'm exactly the same library user as you are this way. I have a bill right now. I haven't been blocked from using the library, thankfully. But it's.
Well, I was going to say, will that still happen? If you don't return and you get this 30-day notice and you still don't return, is there some point where you won't be able to take out more materials?
Probably, but right now the amount I want to say is if you owe $25, you can't actually use your library account. So right now, if something is billed, you have to bring it back or make an arrangement with us to bring that amount down. So all that's still in place. It's just literally taking away this idea of like, just because it isn't back on this date that we've arbitrarily assigned. On the material that you as a property or community members already own this material anyway.
Well, given the info that all the other, that 2 counties already have no fines, I'm not going to quibble, but I do think that I do think it'll have an impact on both the length of time things are on holds and your rainy day or whatever, lucky day thing, because people will be like, oh, I'll get it and I'll keep it as long as it takes me to read it.
Because many, many libraries have done this, I will be able to get you statistics about why that's actually not happening.
Yeah.
I mean, because we have real-time data of these changes happening. Like Washington County just made the change in the last 3 years. I don't know when Multnomah County made its change, but it's also recently. Yeah, but so I think those are the fears, and I think it's not as bad as you think it would be. But I'll get you some data. Don't take my word
Doesn't
for
the
it.
30-day clock solve that problem?
No, I mean, there's no teeth to the 30-day clock.
I think the $25 not being able to check anything else out is really, it's the combo of that and the 30-day. So
Okay.
go to 30-day, then replacement cost, once that gets over 25, it's like you can't get anything else until you pay.
Also, like, you'll still get the reminders, this is overdue. You'll still get the, please bring back your things. You'll get, for those of you signed up for text messages, to get all that. But what I offer to you, really to think about, and if there are real concerns about the revenue piece, like, I just need to understand, like, is that a thing? Like, this really is a council thing that I want you to think about. Like, is that, do we want to be leaders? Do we want to push forward? Are we okay making the adjustments in budget? Like, in the future, because if there are strong feelings, I just need to know that I'm not going to put my efforts to that unless there's support.
I'm sorry, I'm an idiot.
Welcome.
Thank you. I'm trying to get the fashionably late thing down. In terms of budget, what are we talking, how much are we talking about?
Oh, it's okay. In this case, if you were looking at a daily overdue fine, and my math is 1 month, the month of April, we're talking about $915 in that month. So roughly $11,000 of revenue that would not be coming in. But then if you look at the equity case of like why we charge fines at all, who gets cut out because of fines?
Right.
Well, and is 11,000 something you would have to eliminate from your budget? Or is that really covered by what the Friends do for the library?
Well, it wouldn't be friends, but there would be a whole conversation about like, are we asking the library operation to eat that from its small amount of budget? Like, that's a question we've not really answered. I don't know what the answer is there.
I will say, ahead of, what will that be, 25, 26
Yeah.
budget process?
Yeah.
I think the tentative idea of plugging that hole seems appeasing. The thing I will say, and I don't know if it's a library conversation or a city conversation at large, is I'm sure we're going to be having $10,000 here and there, and it adds up. And so finding, as we talk about a revenue package here as a council, finding something that's indexed to inflation, so in 10 years, we're not like, well, crap, we gave the library $10,000 and we can't pay for it now. I think that that will be really important.
Yeah, and also just keep in mind that like right now, 76% of our funding is coming from the county library district. And we just have to make sure that we're spending, there may be a point in the future that we have to make sure that we are spending the amount that's coming in to pay for library operations. We're not, at this point, we're not close to that. City is paying more than is coming in, but there might be a time in the future we have to look at that piece as well.
So, are there waivers, fee waivers?
Oh, sure,
There are.
sure. I mean,
That we currently have.
right now, it's very open. If you say you can't pay, we're going to work with you to figure out how to give you that this year. But that's just what we're going to do.
I just don't want to, I appreciate that, I'm on the same lines as you, the other side of me is saying, I don't want to shorthand the library either with the library.
Oh, I agree.
Well, I mean, I do think, so are you proposing that this would start with the new fee schedule? With the July 1?
It would not be July 1. I'm saying within our plan by fiscal year 26 is sort of the goal.
Okay.
So this is me laying it out right now so we can
Brent
can
is
really
so ahead of
start
the game.
conference. Yeah.
Pre the start of the biennium, talking about the next biennium. I do,
We should figure out 11,000 by then.
So too.
and what we've committed to is bringing you quarterly budget updates and quarterly supplementals. So if this was the type of thing as Brent is implementing the strategic plan, they feel like they're ready to enact, we could bring that and do the budget adjustment to show you how we're going to accommodate that 11,000 estimated reduction in one of those updates.
I mean, again, this is the first time we've had a conversation about this here. I don't expect us to have consensus today, but it really helps me understand what sort of, how I can prepare to bring this conversation.
I'd like to see how this works out.
Yeah, me too. And I would say right now there are libraries in this county that are not very forward about it, but they are making things fine free. There is a library in our county that's just checking everything in and not assessing fines. There's another library in our county that will offer to waive all the fines anytime people come in. But I would like us to be transparent and be leaders and talk about like what we want to do and what we want to achieve and be forward about it. Let's have a win.
And we don't have to be, I mean, we can go our own way. We don't
can.
have to be in lockstep with the county.
Yeah, there we go. No, 100%. Each city sets their own fine rates. But I can also tell you with working with the other libraries, the plan that the directors are working towards is going fine free throughout the county. But I also think like we need to put it out there and it needs to move through the cities this way too. And then finally, you'll see one other budget implication is potentially pay equity for library positions and similar city positions. I just want a day like this. There needs to be research, but if you look at positions within the library and compare them to similar responsibilities for other positions within the city, it looks like library positions are paid less than other positions of similar work. I'm not an HR professional, but it's a thing that I see, and I have had many conversations in the last 2 years about this particular thing. And I just want to say that it's a thing I see, and I want to bring that up because it could have future implications on budgets. Because I want us to study and know if that's accurate. And I'm running out of time, but
Well, I didn't announce that at the beginning, but I should have. The third item, tree code amendments, is being removed from the agenda, so
Oh.
you have some flexibility.
great. Well, I won't go on too long. Much of this plan really is the idea of focusing we have limited resources, so if we're gonna like do big things in a short time, it means looking at our capacity to do things and being able to say yes and no to things. And this plan really focuses on like having equity impacts. And the rest of this presentation sort of talks about some examples of things that we can do. So like what we hope to focus our efforts on is to engage with critically underserved and underrepresented marginalized community members. So what does that look like? Well, it means we can't do all the things, we can't do all the events, we can't do all the programs. But when we have choices, this is where we need to put the extra efforts. When 90% of our time and resources are committed to like just doing our core operations, how do you really leverage that? That's the goal of this plan. So there you go. Questions about that? I know I sort of overglossed that. Long day, anyone? Exactly. So one of the ways that you've already heard me talk about this earlier, I think the way that we can improve our services in underserved areas of our community is that potential of installing lockers. That even, like first it's like hitting other areas in this community that are further away from the physical library, but it also could be installing lockers at the library to extend the hours of when people are able to pick up materials, right? Right now, we're limited to when we can staff the building. That is when you can pick up materials. That is another way that we can do it. Another thing that the library board was excited about when we talked about how do you serve in other parts of the community, it isn't necessarily building a new library. It is actually showing up and maybe finding a space for a limited duration to have a pop-up library to provide some services or some events or internet for some period of time to like try it out. They were very excited about that kind of idea to see like, how can we leverage the spaces that we have? And then finally, that you heard me talking about this earlier, it's also investigating and planning for vehicles to like help us take that mission out of them.
Mobile library.
Exactly.
Seamless.
Yeah. I think it's cool, especially if we can get other people to pay for it. And like, I think this is the kind of thing people get excited about.
Have one of those pull up to city events.
Exactly. We can bring in your internet. So there's also this internal component, if you look closely into the strategic plan, and it really is, how do we maintain a healthy library? I think our city is a small and mighty city that does a lot with the people and the budget it has. But I do worry sometimes that we take on a lot, so I want us to be very thoughtful as we try to have these big dreams and like how to do it. So one of the things you're going to see is we're going to look for ways to make sure that our employees are engaged with the work we're doing, the planning, and we are making sure that they're heard and seen and incorporated in what we do. We're also going to focus on like a written, developed core service plan. And what this allows us to do is really to put out in writing, these are the most important things we do. These are the extra things we do. And this allows us to really figure out what can we let go of. Because I don't think we can continue doing all the things in all the ways without creating some halos and some spotlights on the things that are most important. So I want to get that done over the next 3 years. And I think that work will inform how we staff the building, how we staff service points, and actually what's happening on the floor of our library, in addition to what we're doing outside. I think this is exciting, but I also know, it's a new library. What do you need to do? There are lots of things we still need to do, and so that's the plan, figure out what that looks like. So I've taken this out. You have an item on the strategic plan that is established. This is an example of what our implementation plan might look like for one of the strategic goals. And it's really looking for ways to actually support the staff so that they can build their confidence and they can succeed in in the changing library. For those of you who are really engaged with what's happening at the library, it is really a different space than 20 years ago. And I need that staff to have the tools to be able to do the work of the modern library. So part of that is developing additional skills for that team of people who are in charge when things go wrong. It's making sure that everyone is comfortable and has that ability to de-escalate, because even though there are lots of good, normal library things happening, sometimes there are people experiencing a lot. They're coming in the door, and our staff are working to connect them to things and bring them back. So there is some escalation and de-escalation. I want to make sure that we are proactively engaging everyone who walks in the door, not just waiting for things to sort of go wrong. And finally, in that building a place where everyone can succeed and building confidence, it is like actually reviewing what do we expect of people walking in the door, and how are we uniformly applying that to everyone. So it's actually reviewing and updating our library code of conduct and making that a part of our next steps, making people safer.
We have a library code of conduct.
We sure do. You can find it on the City of Milwaukee's Letting Library page.
Okay,
Policies, code of conduct.
okay. I had no idea. Okay.
We do. It needs to be updated. That's sort of it. I have everything in writing, but do you have questions or concerns, comments, others?
I just appreciate your thoughtfulness in putting this together. And I like a lot of the points you talk about. I think it aligns what the city's goals are and what the city's vision is, I should say. Yeah, I appreciate it. I know these aren't easy things to do.
I think so too. I should say, thank you for bringing that up. There are three strategic goals. And the third one really is integrating the library fully into Milwaukie Moment, which is our strategic plan. Making sure that we are doing the things that we say we want to do.
Can I look up to see if Counselor Stavengard, I'm not sure I would know if she was raising her hand, so does she want to comment in any way or?
Yeah, she is not on there. She's not got her video on, but she is unmuted.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate that. The presentation was wonderful, and anything that I think we can do to reduce the burden of fees and fines for community members, I'm supportive of. So really exciting stuff, and thank you, Brett.
Thank you.
Other questions, other comments? Other?
I want to go beyond this. Where do you want the library to be in 10 years?
Financially sustainable, with a staff who is able to do everything that our community needs it to. Probably alternate locations beyond our main library, or integrated into other partnerships within this community. Like further, I mean, we have the starting of that right now, like in our library, but I think we can go further. Does that answer your question?
It does.
Picture?
I was kind of leading somewhere else. Have you looked at any of these sort of novel libraries around the country that are taking on, different roles? And the reason I say this, I read a story about, my hometown library of all places, Memphis, Tennessee, evidently has one of the most innovative library systems in the country. And they have music studios and video studios and all kinds of things.
There are libraries that do business incubation. There are libraries who do teaching folks how to cook and start restaurants. Like all those things are possible if we as a city choose these focus. I think we're not there in our current iteration just because if you look at where the goals of the city are. I think the library could do any of those things if it's important to the city. Right now, I think what you see in this plan is really focusing on helping Milwaukeeans most in need, making sure that we are raising voices and giving participation to people who may not have it through other parts of the city, because those are the values and what we've seen come through in the planning over the last few years. If it becomes some of these other parts, when I say we can do anything, but we can't do everything, I'm only willing to lead us to where I know we have strategic importance as a city. And right now I don't see those other things as the things that rise to the top.
Yeah, I would agree. I was just trying to get a pie in the sky look,
It would be interesting to know what their funding is and how they, what their funding level is and how they fund.
It's all money, right? I mean, we can do some really big, important things, but we also have to be, humble with the funds that we have and what we can do with what we have. Without making some changes without making other changes, I'm going to be very realistic about what we can do. But yeah, we can do any of that. What's important to you?
Well, that brings me to the foundation. So the library has had a foundation, I think, for a long time, and it collected donations for the building of the library. I was one of the people who gave money toward that. But I have heard not a peep from them since. Are they still in existence? What do they do other than now that the library is built?
It's very funny you should ask. That is also within this plan. It is actually priority to the very first point in improving organizational health and sustainability is building that capacity of both Friends and Foundation. I'm working with the Library Foundation right now. They really are in a rebuilding. There's a lot of excitement, new members. But I'm going to work with them to build capacity on like, what does a independent nonprofit, which they are, agency do to support the library? I think there's a lot that can happen with the foundation to do, to answer your question. I think having an active foundation that is working in the community to do what foundations do, which is long-term financial support of our library, will take us a long way to get to some of these other goals I've talked about. I really think the foundation is the organization that could fund bookmobiles and book lockers in the future once they have that capacity to do that. So what they're doing right now is rebuilding. I mean, they formed to help build that new library. They did that work along with the work the city did to get the bond. But now it's time to like go to that next generation. And they're ready to do that. That's gonna be fun. I mean, I think it's gonna be fun. That's why I'm here.
It's interesting to put library extensions in our neighborhood hubs.
It's funny, I talked to the host. I'm like, think about this.
Or lockers.
But like if you actually had a place that you can go into, then you can provide the same services to an extent
You good?
within neighborhoods. Break down quite a few of those barriers.
Well,
People
and
from getting over here.
even the materials piece, like you can leave those outside. They vary. It's depending on the model you choose. Like it's about having network connection. But like it also shows where people are going to use materials, and it gives you a blueprint of like where you would grow. Cool.
If there are no more council comments, I just want to note, and council president knows this because every few Fridays I say, hey, I'm the manager on duty at the library, come meet with me there. But I was the manager on duty on Friday at the library, and I just have to call out, I'm on the library chat, which is quite a privilege to be on the library teams chat. And on that day, at the end of the day, 4 different patron stories were shared of people saying, you know, the first one saying, thank you so much for the great pride display. It's so nice to walk in and see the city's values right on display and feel so inclusive and welcoming. Another said it was such a great experience to come to the library. The building is beautiful. They're always greeted with a smile and the collections are great. A couple came up later and talked about how great the cultural passes are. And all of this is in addition to the testimonial I think I sent out a couple weeks ago about how the library does help folks who are most in need day in and day out. So I just want to say, you know, you did kind of gloss over that third goal of integrating it with Milwaukie momentum, and yet you embody the values of Team Milwaukie every single day, Brent. And so thank you to you and Kelly and your team for being the best of us. It's great.
Thanks, Brent.
Thank you.
And put me back on the chat, guys. You took me off the chat, and now I feel really sad.
Oh, I did have one other question, which is, the library does a volunteer event separate from the
We do. And why is that? Is that the question?
Well, I gathered it's because you have a lot of volunteers.
That's the answer. We have something like 100 people helping in different capacities, and I think the city focus, it's like, if it were all, it would be all library. It would almost be all library. It's about city volunteer event.
Well, I would say that I have only once or twice been invited to that, but I think council would maybe like to have an invitation.
I think I invited the council this
I
time.
think you did.
It was on the strategic calendar. I made sure this time.
That's probably our bad, but I saw it come out to the council email. We'll make sure that happens in the future.
Mayor, my apologies, because I know I forgot to invite all of you last year. And I said, we will not do that. So I made sure it ended up on the calendar. Trying.
Okay. Okay, so I missed
I
it.
did note the other counselor's absence.
So you
When
were
I-
You
there.
were there.
Well, I
you.
missed the invite for sure. Okay.
Well, you're certainly welcome. I'll make it I will send out.
All right, our second and last item for this work session is Parks Goal Update. And Emma is,
Doing a little chair, do-si-do. Right. Thanks, Scott. Good afternoon, counselors. I'm Emma Sagor, acting city manager. I'm here to give a little bit of an update on three sort of subtopics related to your current parks goal. A couple of them are going to be just kind of quick, status updates, and then really that third one you see there, Milwaukie Bay Park. We're seeking some direction from council or sort of discussion from council on what you'd like to see staff do next. I'll kind of preface all of this with saying, I've been here a year, and started to swim deep into the park's waters. But there are a lot of folks in the room who have a lot more institutional memory than me on some of the parks questions. So if questions come up, I might be looking to my colleagues to fill some gaps. I also would say several of you, I'm sure, have more institutional memory on this topic than I do. So we're going to focus first on NCPRD relations, sort of the parks governance question and status of our validation action with the Court of Appeals. I'll give a brief update on the development of our 3 neighborhood park projects, and then we'll talk Milwaukie Bay. So just a little timeline and update about where the validation action stands. This is also summarized in the staff report. To take you back about 2 years ago, in July 2022, Milwaukie filed a validation petition to clarify the procedure for leaving the Parks District. There was a disagreement between our understanding, the city's understanding, and what was stated in the IGA and what the Board of Directors contended, and so we filed a petition to clarify that procedure. The Circuit Court ruled about a year later that Milwaukie must follow the process outlined in ORS 198 to leave the district. The city has appealed that decision. We appealed that about a year ago. Just kind of get all these up there. We're currently awaiting the status of the appeal. So the spoiler alert is we don't have an update on that. That's still working its way through the court process. But there were a couple things that happened in the latter part of 2023 I want to touch on. Council, two members of our council and our city manager at the time did convene in a conversation with the county chair and a commissioner to discuss a possible way forward in September. Following that meeting, the city received a letter from the NCPRD directors instating a pause, this is a direct quote, a pause on future discussions with the city until that pending litigation is resolved. And so because of that communication and that communication pause, we have not engaged in more conversations at the council level with NCPRD or with the board of directors. So that's the kind of status update on the first piece, status update on the second piece, and I'm so happy to see him here, Adam Moore over there, our parks coordinator. Construction is proceeding swimmingly at Scott Park, Bowman Bray Park, and Balfour Park. These pictures were all taken yesterday on a site visit that Adam took myself and Sasha on a little tour. You can see them in the first picture, but really a lot of earth moving, a lot of progress being made at all 3 parks. Adam's the expert here, so if you have questions on specific status, let me know. I want to call your attention particularly to the Balfour picture. That's that kind of back part of that parcel where the embankment slide is going to be, which I think is so cool. So it's really awesome to see that all coming together. We are still on track for construction to wrap up in October. Maybe might push a little bit to November for one of the parks, but mostly complete by October. And we are starting to gear up planning a ribbon cutting celebration tentatively for that last weekend in October, right before Halloween. So more to come on that. And just real gratitude to Adam for the excellent project management on not 1, not 2, but 3 construction sites. Okay, so the third piece, and the piece that I think we'll spend probably the bulk of our time discussing tonight, is Milwaukie Bay Park. So first, just a little bit of history. Again, this is the place where once we get into the IGA soup, I might have to turn to my esteemed colleagues to fill in gaps I might not know. But Milwaukie Bay Park currently sits at 50% construction designs. Back in the early 2020s, late 2010s, when we were proceeding with phase 3, we got to 50%. And then we began negotiating IGAs with NCPRD and the county to make sure the project had support to move forward. Specifically, there was work on a funding IGA, so an agreement about how the park was going to be paid for and arrangements about what was coming from the city versus the county. and then a construction IGA. My understanding is both of those intergovernmental agreements were swiftly adopted by the city once they were completed, but they were written with a sunset clause of June 2022, so they have now both sunset. My understanding then is that they were both presented to the board of directors, that the construction IGA was adopted in November, but the funding IGA was pulled from several consecutive agendas, and then finally was adopted, but under the condition that a new master or cooperative IGA be agreed upon between the city and the county. A little background on that master or cooperative IGA. I put the word maintenance up there because in a recent conversation with NCPRD staff, the term maintenance IGA came up, and I think that's really what they're referring to this third piece here. But that's an agreement that was first adopted in 1990. It's had several amendments, most recently in 2020. After that decision by the board of directors to make approval of the construction IGA, the funding IGA contingent on the master IGA, a draft of that cooperative agreement was provided to the city in 2022. But that draft removed any language allowing the city to leave the district under ORS 222.254. That draft was not advanced or approved by the city. The current cooperative or master IGA that's in place is still the one that was amended in 2020. This is kind of hidden by the box there, but it does not currently reflect or account for all of the added or improved parks that have happened since 2020, including the three it includes the three that we're developing, but not the updated versions of Bowman, Bray, Balfour, and Scott. Ooh, this is tiny, I'm sorry. I will happily read out any of the numbers for you, but I wanted to give a little bit of a funding summary to kind of put some dollars and cents to what we're talking about here. I will say that the numbers I have here come from the most recent budgets adopted by the two organizations, NCPRD and Milwaukie. And particularly on the NCPRD side, it's been a little bit of a moving target. I pulled Peter in my office today because we were trying to square a few numbers. So we're fairly sure these are the right numbers, and that are what was shared by NCPRD leadership to the DAC last week. But there's a little bit of discrepancy with some pages in the NCPRD budget that I would like to validate going forward. But so up here in the kind of teal, those are the pieces that you can find in NCPRD's budget. And I want to specifically call out 3 grants that have been won or received to advance the project. The first is a state grant from the Oregon Parks and Recreation Department, LGGP, the local government grant program. That's a $750,000 grant. It expires next month. The next round of grant submittals for that program, is in April 2025. The second one is a federal Connecticut Water Conservation Fund grant for just over $1 million. That one requires closeout of the project by October 2026. And the third is a Metro REPA grant, Regional Flexible Funds. The kind of next milestone on that one is they're requiring an agreement for tribal engagement from NCPRD by September of this year. In recent conversations I have had with NCPRD leadership, as well as I think the messages that were shared at the DAC last week, is that NCPRD is seeing July 2024 as a big kind of moment to provide the grantors an update. I think that update is either we're proceeding and here's the game plan for how we're proceeding, or there is no plan to proceed right now and we'd be kind of returning the funds. The relationship with the grantors is positive according to NCPRD leadership, and so there would be an opportunity for reapplying in the future if that's the path we go down.
Can I hop in here? Imagine that NCPRD was not coming to the table with any funds. It looks like there would be about a $1.9 million hole in funding. Is that correct? With SDCs, and NCPRD general funds, or am I reading that
More
incorrectly?
than that, because that's their metro local share.
So that's not a grant that we would also get. They would be contributing that in theory from a different pot of funds.
Yes.
Okay, okay, thank you.
Yes, exactly. And the grants, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, anyone who knows better, but the 3 grants were provided to NCPRD. They are not, there would have to be a transfer of those grant resources to the city of Milwaukee.
Okay, thank you.
So then the purple section that you see here is urban renewal funding and Milwaukee General Fund. Now this has shifted. This table looked different 2 years ago when this project was in a different spot than it does today with the budget you just adopted. We used to have some money from the general fund put towards this project because of the uncertainty about the forward progress here and because of our general fund revenue constraints. In the most recently adopted budget, there is 0 general fund dollars put towards Milwaukie Bay Park. There is urban renewal dollars put towards park projects. There is $1 million put towards Trolley Trail and Dogwood Park, which are both kind of contiguous or next to Milwaukie Bay. So in this table, we just wanted to show there is URA funding currently in the adopted budget related to parks projects. That could be, with direction from the MRC, redirected to Milwaukie Bay. And I would let my executive director of the MRC speak to this, but there's also more increment financing available should the MRC be interested in expanding the amount of investment put from URA dollars towards the park. Oh, and then finally, those local share dollars, I put the asterisk next to the NCPRD one because this again is something that wasn't very clear in the current NCPRD budget. But the last time we had the funding IGA, it was $750,000 of metro local share dollars from Milwaukee. We are still committed to that. And then it was $3 million from NCPRD. I will also say that in 2022, the construction price of the project was $9.4 million. Our very rough estimate with inflation would be that that's upwards of 10 million, but it likely is even higher than that.
So, 2 things. One is, this is just a little piece, but the Parks Foundation has 65,000
Oh, great.
instead of 40,000. But the bigger point is the Zone 1 SDCs are now something on the order of 4 million in accrued pot. So, I mean, we don't have control of them, but I mean, I think that it should be a negotiating point to be able to share all of those SDCs.
Yeah. Thank you, Mayor. That 1.5 number is what again is showing on the Milwaukie Bay page of the NCPRD
Right.
budget, but I take your point with the overall pot has accrued.
Can I ask one more question, just my own naivete, but when we look back at the conditions that they set on a master grant amendment, there was leaving the district. Are there other things that were sticking points in a master IGA change that they proposed that were tricky, or was it really that one, leave the
I mean,
district?
there was a lot of little things. I mean, and Mark Gamba and Justin were definitely more involved in that than I was. But the leaving the district was the big thing. And I did want to say, well, I don't want to cut Emma off if she.
I think I know what you're going to say. You're welcome to read the part of the construction.
So today we got an email from NCPRD via the county commissioners. We were copied on an email from a neighborhood that wrote to the county commissioners urging them to move forward. And the response that was given says the project remains on hold pending a cost-sharing agreement with the city of Milwaukie in the event of the city's departure from NCPRD. That is new language to me because the project was put on hold multiple times because they wanted that master IGA. They wanted that master IGA that said, that where we gave up the right to leave the district. If that's no longer the case, and if this represents their position, I think we have, it's maybe time to start talking to them again. Because this is something, we did have a clause that, that committed us to refunding money should we ever treat anybody out, any non-Milwaukie resident differently. So I mean, I think this language gave me some hope today that there's a potential opening for conversation. But because this is new language to me. It doesn't condition anything on the master IGA.
And I believe it's disclosed in the staff report. The director of NCPRD did reach out to me and engaged in a kind of conversation about this last week. Or we met last week. So that really is a good segue, Mayor, into the sort of questions we wanted to put on the table for you all tonight, which is, would you like to see city staff work collaboratively with NCPRD staff to try to move this project forward? The second piece there is, if yes, as we do that, what are your thoughts on using and exploring ways urban renewal funding could help accelerate development of Milwaukie Bay Park? Again, we would bring any, changes to the MRC budget back to the MRC for consideration, but this would help give us some direction of what you'd like us to explore. And then 3, should staff attempt to re-engage NCPRD staff to negotiate terms on Milwaukie Bay Park construction funding IGAs? And this is back to the language I was provided last week was a maintenance IGA, but I believe that's really in reference to the cooperative IGA for all city parks. In that case, what parameters or specific outcomes would you want us to be advocating for? These are big questions, but this is what work sessions are for, is really for dialogue, debate, discussion. I'll leave these up here and
let me just say on the third one, I mean, I do think there's a maintenance, the master IGA definitely has a maintenance component. The list of the parks and what level of maintenance they're supposed to have. And since we have new parks, we have new amenities in those parks. We also have acquired Elk Rock Island after the last time we negotiated that. So, I mean, it seems to me like renegotiating the maintenance part is one thing. Renegotiating the whole of the master IGA is quite a different and heavier lift.
And that could be a parameter we set on it, that we aren't wanting to reopen the full cooperative IGA, but we would like to create a maintenance IGA.
Yeah.
I too want to focus on the third bullet, and I want to be optimistic. But, this goal line keeps moving. And so, trust but verify. I really think whether we call it the master or the maintenance, whether that's 1 or 2, I really don't know, but it's more of a global umbrella thing. And I don't think that's right for renegotiation at this point. Do you? The global. However, I think that the construction and funding, again, if there's a crack there, then we should pursue it. But I'm just concerned that if the staff goes to NCPRD, I just don't want them to build their windmills that are going to get slammed after a lot of effort.
Well, I guess, and that begs the question, should staff do it, or should we offer again a 2-on-2 kind of meeting to have that conversation?
What do you mean, Council President, when you said globally?
Well, the master IGA that defines, the operation of the district is really different from the more micro IGAs of the Milwaukie Bay Park.
Yeah.
The funding and construction.
But you meant that it wasn't right to negotiate currently under what?
Because we're in legal proceedings on that very subject.
But if they're willing to negotiate, won't we want to? Because right now it's been over a year.
Told us they don't want to negotiate with it on that topic.
Yeah, no, I know, but maybe stuff has changed, just like with the email, the wording of the email.
I read the email to be focused on Milwaukie Bay Park. Am I correct?
I believe the email was focused on Milwaukie Bay Park. I think the initial, or not even the initial, the latest letter we received instating or reinstating a pause on communications, I believe was a little bit vague. Is it pause on communications, full stop? Is it a pause on communications purely about the sticking points in the cooperative IGA and proceed with Milwaukie Bay Park? I will say that's what we're seeking direction on. I can't promise what's going to happen on the other side of the table, but we've been a bit of a holding pattern, interpreting it as pause on communications, full stop. I think we could, with the parameters you set today, re-engage with NCPRD staff or re-engage council to board of directors on the park itself. I do think the email sent today, my read was it was about the park itself.
So Councilor Kirschbody, I think if we tried to fold the master, the maintenance, whatever in this, I think it is bogged down because those issues are much bigger. And I think that if we just focus, and I hope that we might get some traction. But I think if we try to bring in all of those other issues, I don't see us making any headway at this point before the appeal court's ruling.
When do we expect, in a dream world, an appeals court ruling or procedures to wrap up?
Sorry.
I'm sure this is not the first time.
That's all you can do.
Because, I mean, I will say for the sake of argument, let's imagine that the city agrees to remove the clause that we can leave at any time. To me, like we saw what happened with Happy Valley. In some ways, as we think about 3 various paths to leave the district, that might be our shakiest. And if we're really prioritizing getting Milwaukie Bay done as quickly as possible, having, at least in negotiations, being willing to see, again, if they want to touch our master IGA, I think that if we really do want to leave the district, there are other more, I would say, legally sound ways that we could leave in a dream world, whether that's going to voters, whether that's going to the legislature. And I think closing down our weakest opportunity might not be the worst thing if it means that we can get the park. I say that for the sake of argument, because I will admit, in this table, I know the least of any, and so I'm happy for any pushback too.
So I will say, well, first off, I mean, I think I've heard our attorney say we're now a year away from a likely decision. And really, you know, it's, you know, the Court of Appeals, nobody has they have no deadline. So, I will say I am very hesitant to, I mean, I do think we have to keep all of our potential ways of leaving the district, you know, in mind. But this the city councils for 30 plus years have had this IGA that says you can leave by a vote of the council.
Yeah.
I think I would be very reluctant to give that up. I would be very reluctant to be the mayor who gave that up after 30 years. So I think, you know, I mean, that is why we're in court, to see if that.
But how much power does it have if it's already been struck down by the court and now we're in appeal? That's like our lot. I mean, we're kind of the one we're against the ropes, not them.
Yeah, I mean, it was a pretty poorly written decision that struck it down. It didn't analyze our arguments really. So I think, you know.
I mean, it's still a toss-up though.
It is. It's not a given. It's not a given. But I mean, for 30 plus years, the city has had that right. And to just give away that right, I think, yeah, that gives me great heartburn.
I would like to see us attempt to re-engage with them. I would say yes to 1 and 3 and no to number 2.
I'm sorry, say it again.
I would say yes to 1 and 3 and no to 2. Because all 1 and 3 is saying almost the same things. just basically re-engage. How we do that, whether it's staff or two of us, that's another discussion.
Well, I was going to say, I appreciate staff daylighting the issue of the potential for urban renewal funding. And I think we should, keep that in mind, but I would like us to pursue our SDCs as the way to fund the gap first, before we tap that.
I would have to agree with you. I don't think, to me, it feels wrong that we're using city funds to supplicate what should be county money, especially considering that we have a host of urban renewal projects that we can do in other parts of the URA. I think that seeing those funds used on Milwaukie Bay Park, even past the funds that we've already allocated, to me, I wouldn't feel comfortable with. Can I return back to the terms of the negotiation? I guess if I were to, stepping away from the legal language, my dream way that we would negotiate is kind of, I think in conversations with county commissioners, they see the writing on the wall. I think they assume that at some point the district will be separate. Is it out of the realm of possibility to do a negotiation for one last hurrah project in Milwaukie Bay Park with some type of use agreement going forward, and the way that we leave the district built into the master IGA? Or is that something that should be considered in this? Or is that something that you think they wouldn't even touch?
I'm not sure I follow.
I guess I
think it's in our interest to bifurcate
okay.
the question of leaving the district from the Milwaukie Bay Park. The only way Milwaukie Bay Park gets done anytime soon is if we can bifurcate those two questions.
Okay.
Why do you think the writing's on the wall?
I think we're looking at the district is not solvent with the tax rate as is, and you're going to have to dissolve the district. And I think the county commissioners, in talking with them, I think realize that the district is not solvent. And so I think we're going to have a conversation. We as a Parks district are going to have a conversation. Do they dissolve the district and try for a higher rate, or do they find a way to separate and go forward? So I think fundamentals of the district are in question too.
I actually agree with that the district is in trouble, but I'm not sure I agree with that the district wants to let go.
Yeah, they don't.
That's fair.
Okay.
Yeah.
Some of the commissioners, I think, would be happy to have this off their back.
Yeah.
Others would not.
Yeah. I've heard mixed things from different commissioners.
Of course.
So
Yeah, pretty much on every subject. Mayor Beatty, I want to go back to what you said about bifurcating the two. I agree. I think we need to do that now more than ever. I wish we would have done it more so, because I feel like these two are tied intrinsically. Because it's like, because Milwaukie Bay Park isn't moving, we're leaving the district. So that's kind of what it's perceived. So I feel like it as much as I want to keep working to do that, I feel like the damage has kind of been done, that they're intrinsically tied, especially with, let's be honest, it's gone beyond, public interest and benefit in terms of why people are banging heads. It's gone more personal because it's been years in the making. So I feel like it's just so intrinsically tied now to the hip of each other that it's hard to separate those two.
Well, I think in the public perception, you're probably right. A lot of public think don't realize we were thinking of leaving even before the Milwaukie Bay Park. So I do think you're right in terms of public perception, but the county commissioners know. And I go back to this language in this email, and maybe I'm putting too much weight on the language in the email, but it is the latest word from the county. So I think we ought to take them at their word.
And I would offer that I think the impetus for the conversation initiated with me was the pending milestones on these grants. So I think they've been very transparent, daylighting the upcoming decision points on the grants too. So I think it's my favorite word, bifurcate. I think if we bifurcate, and I do get direction today for either staff or I think talking about the strategy there is another piece of this. But I think that this is the window to see how far we could get on that capital development piece while keeping the other piece.
And I do want to give a acknowledgement to our PARB chair, Ally Feuerstein, who really pushed this question of the grants and asked for an answer like 3 months ago, and, you know, which was finally answered at last week's DAC meeting. So big kudos to Ally for really being a passionate advocate for completion of Milwaukie Bay Park.
Can I ask, I see us facing two real possibilities. One is we leave the district at the expense of Milwaukie Bay Park, where we lose out on these grants and we lose out on the opportunities to fund it as is. Or we stay in the district and like suffer the consequences of staying in a poorly funded district that is not serving our needs and not giving us the local control. But in so doing, we get Milwaukie Bay Park constructed. I guess what might be helpful for staff and what might be helpful, frankly, this is where I'm kind of stuck. Is it so bad to stay in the district for the time being and drop the appeal if it means Milwaukie Bay Park is constructed? Or is it okay to let Milwaukie Bay Park fall by the wayside if it means that we get control over our local dollars? And
I think that's the
I don't know.
$1 million question.
And Counselor, I would call your attention to the language that the mayor referenced that's in the construction IGA that was adopted by all parties, but I believe is sunsetted of, should a party terminate the agreement and after termination, the city assumes operation and maintenance of the park and does not operate Milwaukie Bay Park with access for all NCPRD residents on the same terms for a period of 25 years from park completion, the city shall pay prorated development costs of NCPRD. So sort of that language, I believe, foresaw that we could do this knowing the future might be uncertain around governance, and there were some protections and commitment from the city side that this would not be there wouldn't be a checkpoint at the beginning of the park to see if you have a Milwaukie driver's license.
Right, yeah.
If we do end up renegotiating, I'd love to be a part of that. And is Councilor Stavanger on?
She is, I believe.
What her thoughts are.
I'm trusting that,
She is still on. She's muted, and I don't see a hand raised.
well, we'll count on Scott to tell us if she raises her hand, because I can't see that.
Yeah, I was trying to look for it.
She's unmuted now.
I'm off mute now. I'm staying off camera for everyone's sake. I appreciate the conversation. I think that there are a lot of challenges in this decision that are so interlinked. But when you really get to the core of this, I think our residents want to see something positive happen with Milwaukie Bay Park. And I don't know that they have a strong opinion one way or another how it happens. And so I think that the actions that we can take to move forward with that goal in mind would probably be in our best interests. I agree with the mayor. I'm not super excited about using urban renewal funds when we haven't exhausted every other possible funding stream. But I do think that having constructive conversations with the county is a good next step. And, I think that the conversation we've had about legal action, I guess my opinion of a validation action is not that this is the same as, suing the county. We're actually just asking the courts for clarification. So I understand that the county may not want to engage in discussion until this matter is clarified, but we have actually we've just asked the courts for clarification. And I hope that we're able to move forward in a way that we don't have to wait years for that clarification, but hopefully that comes soon.
Can I take the implication of what you said there, Councilor Stavanger? Like, if we're pursuing any possibility to get Milwaukie Bay Park funded, would we be willing, like, my own naive perception would be, it would be okay to drop the appeal if it meant that we could, if that is a element of the negotiations, if that means we can get Milwaukie Bay Park funded.
I would not agree to that.
And help me understand why that wouldn't be the best course of action. If it's between Milwaukie Bay Park or continuing the
I don't
appeal.
think it's that. I don't think it's either or. Okay. And I think that there is the possibility they might be able to, bifurcate as the mayor has decided. But if we do leave the park districts, we can do Milwaukie Bay Park. Maybe, years delayed, but I don't think it's an either or. And, I just, staying in the Parks District, this isn't the last hurdle.
Yeah.
Okay? I just think we need local control of our parks.
It's not the first hurdle and it's not the last hurdle. And, they are doing a, what do you call it? Systems plan effort now. And I definitely encourage all Milwaukie residents to participate. There's a survey online, please take it. I mean, that will inform desires and wants for the park system, whether we stay or whether we go. But, Milwaukie city councils for the last 30 years have bought land and built parks outside of NCPRD. NCPRD built Wichita Park and did some green space enhancements, but basically Milwaukie has built all of our own parks. With the new systems plan, we're gonna see, it's true right now, half of the parks in the district are in Milwaukie. Which means, 80% of the district is less parked than the 20% that Milwaukie is. So the systems plan is going to call out all the deficiencies everywhere else. And that's what is going to be their focus, I'm not saying there's no way we could stay in, but we would have to negotiate to make sure we got 20% of whatever they're spending on capital, et cetera, et cetera. I think there are a lot of questions besides Milwaukie Bay Park that go into the question of leaving or not leaving.
But don't those questions necessarily are more or less answered by the elected as opposed to the staff or the directors of NCPRD? That's more directed by people in office, right? So for me, it's like, I kind of look at it, if we've been building our parks without NCPRD, then with or without them, we're still building our own parks, right? So, but to take that tax burden or that cost burden of running a parks district, because we all went through the numbers and saw what it's going to do. It's going to nearly double the rate. That's a lot that that's a lot to put on the backs of people. If we build parks with or without them, then why take that burden and put that on the public?
Well, if you watched their budget, which I sent the link around, their budget message called out the need to raise the rate.
Right. But
So they recognize that as well.
right, but they're not gonna double it. It's gonna probably be somewhere around the 89 cents, 90 cents, something like that, or 83 cents,
Well, I
whatever
don't
it's gonna
know.
be.
I don't know. They didn't.
But, and I understand how the issues that we faced with NCPRD, but again, it's a lot of those issues are surrounded by the direction of the elected officials.
I agree. Let me just add one other thing that, for your benefit, Will, is that in the discussions about Milwaukie, and I'll need to send you a link to a video
I love videos.
of the deliberation of the Parks District Board, which is the county commissioners.
Yeah.
In the discussion about Milwaukie, it's not very pretty.
Yeah.
Okay. And one of the things that you will hear that kind of goes along with the systems, survey is that Milwaukie has more parks than the unincorporated areas. We want to give them some parks. I'm all for that. But it's being held against us that we went out and got the parks,
Yeah,
okay?
yeah,
Okay? So that bothers me.
yeah.
That's held against us, that we showed initiative, that we went out, got grants, funded these things because they weren't doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a county commissioner in particular who pits the unincorporated area against Milwaukie pretty regularly on that score.
So I just want to do a time check.
Yeah.
We have about 8 minutes left in the work session. This has been helpful discussion. I do think, going back to Mayor Beatty's word of bifurcate, I think that, what staff are really seeking direction on today, given the status of the appeal, is specifically on that Milwaukie Bay Park side of things. I think what I've heard as either a majority or a close consensus is that you would like to see how far we can get. The global or the cooperative agreement should not be on the table. It really should be about construction funding and then maybe a little bit on maintenance. We should pump brakes on looking at URA money. We should be exhausting all other opportunities, SDCs, revisit the URA conversation down the road if things, as the picture comes into clearer view. Is that accurate?
I think it's accurate, but I think it still remains seen who fires the first salvo, and that's the staff or us.
Yep.
Right. You think it should be us?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I initially thought that, but then I was thinking, maybe not. I don't know. I'm open to strategy here. I'm trying to see who can get the furthest without a roadblock being thrown up.
Is there a proper, like a channel that you go through to set that up? Or could you email a county commissioner? Like, can I text one of them?
Well, I
and say,
would-
hey, would you like to meet on this? Or does it have to be like,
I would think we would want to, given the exchange of letters last year,
Oh.
that Emma put forth in one of her slides, I think we would want to do a letter back saying, hey, we saw this language and it sounds like maybe there's an opening to talking about completion of Milwaukie Bay Park and we're interested in having those conversations.
I was gonna, hey, let's solve this over a beer. Yeah, we'll do it that way.
Well, I mean,
I didn't know you'd right.
That's the best part.
I would be cautious. I mean, I think you can talk to whoever you want one-on-one.
I'd just rather do it.
I would be cautionary about having I think the 2-on-2
Yeah.
is the better way to go.
I agree.
I think, that actually, I also take some comfort in that is how they approached Wichita and that is how they got to closure on Wichita, was a 2-on-2 between the school board and the Board of County Commissioners.
Similar.
So, I do think if we're gonna do it at the elected level, it should be a 2-on-2.
I would probably tend to agree with Council President Massey that maybe we could test the waters with staff, see how far that gets. And I think it's easy afterwards to say we're going to pull the fire alarm and send in 2 counselors if needed. But seeing what staff can bring forward, I would be curious. Happy to be wrong.
Is that what the
Maybe.
council president said?
I said, I wasn't
You were
sure.
raised-
Oh, okay.
I'm just
I'll
trying,
put words in his mouth that he did not say.
I'm just trying to think about where we could get the most momentum
Yeah,
without a speed
no,
bump.
absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
so that might be with staff rather than us. I don't know.
They
It
may,
might be because, both their director and our acting city manager are new faces, right? And so maybe they get some grace as new faces.
Play the newbie card, yeah.
Yeah.
And I do think ball's in our court. Director Selly reached out to me. We had a great beginning chat and I told her I was coming with these questions to you. So as a next step, I could reach out, say where we got to, and staff can proceed as long as possible. And offer an elected 2-on-2 sit down if the board of directors is open to that. Does that work? Okay,
That sounds good to me.
Thank you. We really appreciate, having something to chew on and move forward, and we'll come back with an update for you soon on how it goes. Okay, that's, I think, what we've got for today.
All right. Well, it's a good thing we didn't want to talk
I
about tree
know.
code. We had no time.
Probably finish the parks for me.
All right, we will be back at 6 for and we will begin with the swearing in of our new counselor before we actually gavel in for the start of the meeting, correct? Yes. So 6 o'clock, we will be back. Thank you.
Okey-dokey.
Great.
So fill that light.